The greatest gift you could give me from my wedding would be for you to disappear from this family forever. Megan stood in the center of my living room, clutching her white leather wedding binder to her chest. My mother, Brenda, stared holes into the hardwood floor. My father, Thomas, gave a slow, silent nod. Megan took a breath and pushed further. She demanded I pack a bag and sleep in a cheap motel off the highway for the week of the wedding. Her bridal party needed my master bedroom to get ready in. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. My jaw locked. 10 years of teaching high school had trained me to handle entitled tantrums with absolute ice. I looked Megan dead in the eyes. All right. I turned my back on all three of them, walked straight into my home office, and flipped open my laptop. The severance started right then. They moved into my home 3 years ago under the guise of helping me grieve. My husband, Ryan, had died in a sudden highway collision, leaving me shattered in a 4-bedroom house we had just finished painting. Brenda packed her bags the day after the funeral, declaring she needed to take care of her eldest daughter. Thomas followed, carrying boxes of his own belongings. Megan took the guest room a month later, claiming her apartment lease was up. They invaded my sanctuary like a slow-moving flood. At first, I welcomed the noise. The silence left behind by Ryan was suffocating, and I was desperate for any anchor. My gratitude blinded me to the reality of their occupation. I was the eldest daughter. I was the responsible one. In Brenda's twisted maternal ecosystem, Megan was the golden child, the delicate, beautiful center of the universe who required constant protection and funding. I was the scapegoat, the workhorse, the appliance. If the appliance was broken by grief, it just needed to shut up and keep generating electricity. I opened a fresh spreadsheet and began auditing the last 36 months of my life. The numbers stared back at me. A sickening autopsy of my own compliance. 3 years of rent-free living for 3 adults. Groceries, utilities, property taxes, and home repairs. $20,000 for a boutique clothing business Megan launched and abandoned 6 months later, leaving me to pay off the commercial lease she had begged me to co-sign. Then came the wedding. Megan was marrying Brandon, a thoroughly decent, completely oblivious guy with a wealthy family. Megan wanted a wedding to match his tax bracket, and she decided my credit cards were the perfect funding source. I pulled up my banking statements. $45,000 in unauthorized charges. Florists, caterers, a luxury venue deposit, a string quartet. She had lifted my card details from my purse and gone on a bridal rampage, assuming my grief made me too distracted to notice, or my lifelong conditioning made me too weak to stop her. The grand total of my exploitation crossed $250,000. My hands shook. I stood up and walked down the hallway to my own bedroom, the one they wanted to kick me out of. Megan's makeup was scattered across my dresser. I looked closer. Resting casually next to a tube of lipstick was a velvet box. I recognized it instantly. It was the last anniversary gift Ryan ever bought me, a delicate diamond pendant necklace. I opened the box. It was empty. Megan had taken it. She told me earlier that week she had found the perfect something borrowed for her dress, completely omitting that she was borrowing it from a dead man to wear to her own vanity project. The remaining shreds of my familial guilt evaporated. My sadness hardened into weaponized logic. I wasn't a daughter or a sister to them. I was a host organism. I set the trap the very next morning. I did not scream or throw plates. True power lies in absolute silence. I researched corporate real estate investment firms operating in Charlotte. These institutional buyers purchase properties for cash, completely as is, bypassing the months of staging and open houses. I filled out an online form. An agent called me within the hour and offered a competitive cash buyout, contingent on a single 15-minute physical valuation. I scheduled the walkthrough for Thursday afternoon. To ensure my uninvited roommates were nowhere near the property, I cashed in 3 years of accumulated credit card points and booked Brenda, Megan, and Thomas an all-day non-refundable bridal spa retreat across town. They left Thursday morning, giddy and oblivious. The real estate agent arrived right on time. The walkthrough was seamless. I signed the electronic closing documents on my kitchen island. The house officially belonged to someone else. I poured myself a glass of water, exhaling a breath I felt like I had been holding for 3 years. Then my phone buzzed. A text message from the Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds. I had enrolled my property in a free county fraud alert system a year ago after reading an article about title theft. The automated text informed me that a quitclaim deed had just been filed, transferring 50% of my property equity to Megan Carter. I stared at the screen. Brenda had actually done it. She had forged my signature to give Megan half my house as a wedding gift. I walked calmly into my home office and logged into the hidden motion-activated pet camera I had tucked behind a bookshelf 2 weeks prior. I scrolled back to Tuesday afternoon. The high-definition footage showed Brenda pressing a document against the window pane, holding my old tax return over it, and meticulously tracing my signature. She then tucked the forged deed into her purse. I downloaded the video to a secure cloud drive. The snare was pulled tight. Friday morning arrived. With the house legally sold, I sat at my laptop and dialed the fraud department of my credit card company. I placed a hard lock on my accounts and initiated a massive dispute for fraudulent, unauthorized use totaling $45,000. I bypassed the bank's lengthy investigation period by taking direct action. I drafted a legally binding revocation of authorization and emailed it to every single vendor Megan had booked, attaching the official police report case number I had just filed for credit card fraud. Vendors do not play games with $45,000 in contested funds. Within 2 hours, the frantic emails and calls rolled in. The florist, the caterer, and the venue suspended all services immediately. They demanded Megan wire replacement funds by 5 o'clock that evening, or her contracts were permanently voided. Megan's bank account was empty. She failed to produce the wire. Megan returned from her final dress fitting to a collapsing world. The venue canceled her reservation. The caterers walked away. Instead of collapsing in shame, her narcissism mutated into pure entitlement. She stormed into my bedroom, screaming that I was a jealous, bitter widow trying to ruin her happiness. She commanded me to fix it. When I simply stared at her, she pivoted to damage control. Brandon and his parents were already on their way to town for the rehearsal dinner. Megan declared that since the luxury restaurant was canceled, she was hosting the dinner right here in my living room. She ordered me to clean the kitchen and stay hidden upstairs. A cold smile spread across my face. Be my guest. Friday evening, the makeshift rehearsal dinner was in full swing. Brandon and his parents sat awkwardly on my sofa while Brenda poured cheap wine, desperately trying to laugh off the change of plans as a cozy, intimate pivot. Megan wore a forced, frantic smile. I stood at the top of the stairs, a single suitcase resting beside my leg. The low rumble of diesel engines vibrated through the floorboards. Heavy headlights swept across the living room windows. The front door groaned open. Two large men in polo shirts bearing the logo of the real estate investment firm stepped into the foyer, holding clipboards. The iBuyers property management team had arrived to secure their new asset. Brenda dropped her wine glass. It shattered across the hardwood. Megan's face drained of all color. Brandon stood up, utterly bewildered. I walked down the stairs, the wheels of my suitcase clicking methodically against the wood. The room fell into a suffocating silence. I ignored my mother. I ignored my sister. I walked straight up to Brandon and handed him a thick black folder. Inside was the $250,000 audit of his future bride's financial parasitism. Every stolen credit card charge, every unpaid rent calculation, the $20,000 business debt. I looked at Brandon's parents, then back to him. The house was sold 48 hours ago. I said, my voice steady and completely void of emotion, the new owners are here to take possession. Everyone currently standing in this living room has exactly 10 minutes to vacate the premises before they call the police for criminal trespassing. Megan lunged forward, grabbing Brandon's arm, stuttering incoherently. Brandon opened the folder. He flipped past the credit card statements. He looked at the bank chargebacks. He stared at the itemized list of my stolen funds. He slowly closed the folder and looked down at Megan. You told me your parents paid for all of this. He whispered. You told me you were financially independent. Brandon dropped his champagne flute on the rug. He turned his back on his weeping fiancée, walked out the front door, got into his car, and drove away. I watched his taillights disappear down the street. I turned to my family one last time. 10 minutes, I reminded them. I walked out into the cool evening air, loaded my suitcase into my trunk, and drove toward my new apartment. I left them stranded in their formal wear on the front lawn, drowning in the consequences of their own entitlement. A week passed. The wedding was officially canceled. Brandon blocked Megan on every platform. But a parasite does not die quietly. Megan decided to strike one last time. She wanted to destroy the only thing I had left in my career. I was in the middle of teaching a junior history class when the school principal opened my door, looking pale and terrified. Two uniformed police detectives stood behind him. They escorted me to the administration office. Megan had filed a police report claiming I stole her $20,000 engagement ring out of spite. She demanded I be arrested for grand larceny. I did not panic. I did not raise my voice. I sat down at the conference table and opened my iPad. I tapped on a photograph I had taken a month ago. Brenda had forced me to clean out Megan's cluttered car, claiming the bride was too stressed to manage basic hygiene. While emptying the glove box, I found a crumpled piece of paper inside a fast food bag. It was a pawn shop ticket. I snapped a photo of it just in case. I slid the iPad across the table to the detectives. Megan pawned her own ring 3 months ago. I explained, here's the ticket, the transaction number, and the exact address of the pawn shop currently holding it. The detectives stared at the screen. Filing a false police report is a crime. Insurance fraud is a felony. But I was not finished. I swiped to the next file. Here is security footage from my home office showing Megan stealing a diamond necklace that belonged to my late husband. I swiped again. And here is high-definition footage of my mother, Brenda, forging my signature on a quitclaim deed to commit real estate fraud. accompanied by the time-stamped county alert proving she filed it. The detectives stopped asking questions. They closed their notebooks, thanked me for my time, and walked straight out of the school. They drove directly to the cheap roadside motel where Brenda and Megan had been hiding out since the eviction. The fallout was swift and absolute. Megan and Brenda were handcuffed in the motel parking lot, read their rights, and shoved into the back of a squad car. Thomas stood by the ice machine, watching his wife and favorite daughter scream his name. He did not step forward. He looked at Brenda through the cruiser window. "I am not bailing you out this time," he said. Thomas walked back to the motel room, grabbed a single duffel bag, walked to the local Greyhound station, and bought a one-way ticket to his brother's house in Tennessee. He abandoned them to the justice system. I sit now in my new apartment. It is small, quiet, and profoundly peaceful. The air smells like fresh coffee and old books, not resentment and obligation. In the aftermath of the arrests, I spent a lot of time analyzing the delusion of entitled families. They do not actually hate you. They hate the boundaries that stop them from using you. Narcissism is a condition of supreme laziness. They want the warmth of a fire without ever having to chop the wood. I thought about my father's cowardly silence. For 30 years, he kept the peace by sacrificing me to my mother's toxicity. Passivity in the face of abuse is not neutrality. It is participation in disguise. My family asked me to disappear, assuming my absence would magically solve their problems. They never realized I was the only structural pillar keeping their fake, hollow lives from collapsing into dust. If you are listening to this and you are exhausted from carrying the weight of people who only love what you can do for them, there are 3 rules you must learn to survive. Rule number 1, blood is a biological fact. Family is a behavioral choice. Sharing DNA with someone does not grant them a VIP pass to disrespect your existence. You do not owe your sanity to people who treat your boundaries as an insult. The title of mother, father, or sister is earned through mutual care, not extracted through biological extortion. Rule number 2, the ultimate retaliation is absolute silence. Narcissists feed on your emotional reactions. They want you to scream, to cry, to argue, because conflict validates their importance. When you pack up your resources, lock your doors, and leave without a single word of explanation, they starve. You cannot out-argue a professional manipulator. You can only remove their access to you completely. Rule number 3, never set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. I allowed my family to plunder my life because I thought protecting them was my duty. I realized that honoring my dead husband's memory meant protecting myself first. Your resources, your time, and your peace are finite. Stop pouring your clean water into their bottomless, toxic wells. Have you ever stayed at a table where respect was no longer being served? Just because they were family. Have you ever bitten your tongue while someone devoured your life? Ask yourself right now, what would happen to them tomorrow if you took your plate? Stood up and walked away today. If you know exactly what I am talking about, leave your story in the comments below. Hit the like button. Subscribe for more truths. And remember, your peace is worth defending. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there, clenching your jaw, asking, why did she wait 3 years? Why on earth did she pay off a $20,000 business debt? Why didn't she kick them out the second her sister demanded she sleep in a motel? It is completely maddening to watch from the outside. But let us break down the psychology of what actually happens when you are trapped inside a toxic family system. Sarah was not stupid. She was suffering from the slot machine effect, what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. When you are raised by a mother like Brenda, you are trained from birth to believe that love is transactional. Sarah was starved for affection. So every time she paid a bill, or hosted a dinner, or fixed a mess, her family gave her a tiny, fleeting crumb of validation, just enough to keep her pulling the lever, hoping that this time the slot machine would pay out real, unconditional love. They hijacked her grief. They weaponized her responsibility. They kept her addicted to the hope of being a family until the moment Megan's cruelty finally broke the spell. But once Sarah woke up, she executed a masterclass in financial self-defense. Let us look at the specific street smart moves she made that you need to remember. First, she used the audit strategy. When you realize you are being exploited, your emotions will tell you to confront the abuser immediately. Do not do that. Scammers and narcissists hate details. Sarah did not scream. She opened a spreadsheet. She quantified the abuse, $250,000. Seeing the exact numbers strips away the emotional manipulation. It turns a family argument into a forensic reality. Second, she executed the buyout. By quietly selling her home to an institutional cash buyer, Sarah bypassed months of real estate red tape, open houses, and sabotage. She traded maximum market value for maximum speed and absolute secrecy. Sometimes you have to invest in your own freedom. Walking away cleanly is worth infinitely more than fighting a dirty war over equity. Third, and most importantly, she mastered building the case. Sarah did not trust her family's word, so she relied on infrastructure. She installed a hidden camera. She enrolled in county property alerts. When Megan filed the false police report, Sarah did not argue with the detectives. She let the timestamps, the pawn shop receipts, and the video files do the talking. She let her abusers dig their own graves. And then she simply handed the police the shovels. Blood does not make you family, loyalty does. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. Even if you share a last name, trust is earned, not owed by default. If you are funding someone else's delusion at the expense of your own peace, it is time to cut the cord. If this breakdown helped you see a toxic situation in your own life more clearly, share your experience in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into surviving the people who are supposed to love you. Remember, your peace is not negotiable. Protect it at all costs. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did she wait 3 years? Why did she pay off a $20,000 business debt for a sister who treated her like an appliance? Why didn't she kick them out on day one? It is completely maddening to watch from the outside. But let us step back and decode the psychology of what actually happens when you are trapped inside a toxic family dynamic. Sarah was not stupid. She was suffering from the slot machine effect, what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. When you are raised by a mother like Brenda, you are trained from birth to believe that love is a transaction. Sarah was starved for affection, so every time she paid a bill, hosted a dinner, or fixed a disaster, her family gave her a tiny, fleeting crumb of validation, just enough to keep her pulling the lever, hoping that this time the slot machine would finally pay out real. unconditional love. They hijacked her grief and kept her addicted to those crumbs of hope. But once Sarah woke up, she executed a masterclass in financial self-defense. Let us analyze the 3 specific street smart moves she made that you need to remember. When you realize you are being exploited, your emotions will scream at you to confront the abuser immediately. Do not do that. Scammers and narcissists thrive in emotional chaos, but they absolutely hate details. Sarah did not scream. She opened a spreadsheet. She quantified the abuse down to the cent, $250,000. Seeing the exact numbers strips away the emotional manipulation. It turns a messy family argument into a cold. Forensic reality, by quietly selling her home to an institutional cash buyer, Sarah bypassed months of real estate red tape, nosy open houses, and inevitable family sabotage. She traded maximum market value for maximum speed and absolute secrecy. Sometimes you have to invest in your own freedom. Walking away cleanly and quickly is worth infinitely more than fighting a dirty, prolonged war over equity. Sarah did not trust her family's word, so she relied on solid infrastructure. She installed a hidden camera. She enrolled in county property alerts. She took a quick photo of a crumpled pawn shop receipt. When the police showed up, Sarah did not argue with the detectives or her sister. She let the timestamps, the receipts, and the video files do the talking. She let her abusers dig their own graves, and then she simply handed the authorities the shovels. Here is the ultimate verdict. Blood does not make you family, loyalty does. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. Even if you share a last name, trust is earned, not owed by default. If you are funding someone else's delusion at the expense of your own peace, it is time to cut the cord. Have you ever had to use the audit strategy or walk away from a toxic dynamic? Tell me your story in the comments below. Subscribe for more street smart insights on protecting your peace and your wallet. Remember, your self-worth is not negotiable. Protect it at all costs.